So now we will go to item 16. Electoral matters. Now, sorry, did I have that turned off? Did I? We'll go to electoral matters. You'll have to move it now. Am I under the impression that there's a amendment from Celeste? Is that right? Okay. So we've got to move. Obviously, we've got to move it for the amendment. We've got a seconder for it. So do we have that there? Whilst we're looking at that and digesting it, Helen, do you want to talk to it, please?
I think the report pretty much speaks for itself. There was a detailed council briefing on the options before the council. I would, though, just like to touch on the amendment that is before you and suggest a slightly later date. Some of you may be aware that the electoral officer, who's seated beside me, Joe Daly, is currently on secondment to support the independent hearings panel. And if I could suggest July as an appropriate date for the report to come back, it gives sufficient time for Joe Daly to come back into legal and democratic services to a substantive position and so forth. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. So questions, got Sarah first?
So is that okay with Celeste?
Is that okay with you two?
Oh, there's some questions about that.
Okay, far away
timing
then.
Thing. So if this didn't come back till July, that wouldn't give us enough time to put the money on budget and long-term plan to do that. So I'm trying to, like if we're prioritising this kind of democratic process, then is there a way to find that resource?
I think if council resolved to do something in relation to election, we'll be able to work through the financial implications of that. Yeah. It would not be a significant or material change to an existing budget, but it is a matter of identifying that corporate resource.
Okay. So back to the, I've got other questions.
Yeah.
No, so back to the beginning. So since the last election, I've checked several times, including earlier this year, to make sure that a report on electoral matters would come to council in time for us to have a normal, standard and comparatively cheap have your say conversation with the community. But by the time this report has come to council, so even to the briefing that we had, that was no longer an option on the table because there wasn't enough time to do that before we had to make the decision. This is the first time we're making a decision in public, and I'm just wondering why it has taken so long to bring this report to council.
And I'm happy to own that delay, for which I apologise, and it's purely through to resourcing and capacity on my end.
Okay, so if we were, so the information on the ability to have your say, so it says that we would need a really nice package of information prepared, a big citywide campaign so that people would be well educated and that they could choose. Is that right? So it would take some time?
I may need to defer to colleagues
Happy
to
with
answer
that. But yeah.
Kia ora. To do this comfortably, yes, we would be looking at preparing quite a lot of information. It would involve the elements that you said.
And that's because the way that we elect our representatives is actually of importance to the community and should be a good conversation about what we do.
Yes, that's correct.
So therefore, being able to just make this decision without talking to our community on just choosing one or the other, or not even choosing to consult with the community, seems like to me not in line with the significance of the decision, if that makes sense.
If I may clarify, this isn't a decision today, it's just noting that the electoral system that is in place for the council is first past the post. Yeah, there has been no decision.
Yeah, but effectively we gave guidance and we made some sort of decision not to go ahead with asking our community so that we could make a decision.
I'm not sure. I think I've answered that.
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So at this stage, then, that means that if it's going to be if council isn't even going to make a decision on whether it asks the community until after July next year, that really limits the ability of the time available for the community to demand a poll.
The community's still able to demand a poll.
But they have no
Now.
certainty of a decision at this stage, except that we're saying we're not going to do it. Is that right?
The community have the right to demand a poll that exists. It requires 5% of the registered voters
Yeah.
to demand a poll, and that would happen if 5% of the registered voters demanded a poll.
Cool.
Okay, I had Tim, then Celeste, then Jake.
So, as I understand it, there could be a poll, or there would be a poll at the next election and that would, if whatever's decided then, would carry on to the next 2 consecutive elections. Yes.
That's correct.
And so, if it is held at that time, then the cost is around about 175,000. Whereas if it's a standalone poll, totally independent of an election, it's more like $750,000 to 800,000.
That's correct. Those are the numbers in the report.
So I'm a bit confused about what we're looking at here, because I'd be quite status quo as it happens at the next election, and there we get a good representative of the public who decide, as they did last time, whether it's first past the post or STV, and then we get to follow the next 2 elections, rather than spend an extra $800,000 or $600,000 just to get an opinion, that we're going to get anyway. So we're going to do it anyway at the next election, and it's going to be save about $600,000 plus.
No, we're not going to do it.
I know.
Maybe.
Decision hasn't been made.
Okay, right. But if it were to happen at the next election, to ask our community whether they preferred first past the post or STV, it would be less than $200,000, thereabouts.
That's our best guess
Yep.
now.
Yep.
On that, but the other factor that is relevant is at the time of the local elections, this organisation is geared up to support electoral activity.
Yes.
So in terms of, it's not just the out-of-pocket expenses,
Yep.
but actually the staff resource and allocation
And we
is
have done
geared
that
up
in
for
the
that
past.
time.
In the past with key things as well, haven't we? Yep. Thank you.
Okay, Celeste.
I think this question's been asked and answered, but I'll just ask the question again just for clarity. So a standalone poll is the most expensive option if there was a desire and 5% of the community did a petition or the council resolved to hold a poll. Is that correct? So what we're doing today is just seeking information about holding a poll at the same time as the next election. Is that your understanding?
So the staff recommendation is just to note the status quo. The amendment that is before you is to ask a report for more information about a poll.
Correct. So what we're doing is getting information to look at holding, gaining information so we can make a decision about holding a poll at the time of the next election, which, as we've discussed, is the cheapest option. Sorry, that's a statement more than a question, but just clarifying my understanding. Thank you.
Okay, good. Jake, please, and then Sarah again. Is that
Can you comment on the benefits of STV as they are interwoven with larger multi-member wards? Like, I understand the proportionality that you can get with STV is only likely to be achieved if you're having more than one councillor in an area. There's no proportionality. You can't split one single person into different pieces and get proportionality. You'd have to have multi-member wards, would you not?
There's multiple amounts of research for and against. Obviously, if you've got a position with 2 candidates, then it happens. But if you had 12 candidates for one position, then it can make a difference. But there's various research that say it's fabulous for single-member wards and it's better for multi-member wards. So I don't feel confident that I can make a recommendation.
Oh, that's a fair answer. And has there been an attempt to do a petition before to gather 5% of the city's population? And was that successful or not?
I was aware 3 years ago there was a group in the community that were working towards it and sought some information on it, but they didn't lodge that petition. I understand they didn't get the numbers. So not formally that I'm aware of.
And final question, is central government considering mandating this nationwide anyway?
It was part of the report on local government, so possibly. And, you know, I think the report makes it clear under what we've got currently, this is what it is, a potential change with a bill that's in Parliament at the moment, pulling forward some of those dates, but who knows?
Thank you. Sarah? And we need to get...
Thanks. So what's the last date that as a council, or if a poll came to us, we could decide, or we would have to decide to do a poll at the next election?
Okay.
So for the next election,
Yeah, rather than just one ahead of, for it to change the system ahead of the election. So when does a decision have to be made by, or a petition lodged by, to make the call for the next, for holding it during the election?
those timings are in the report.
Yeah,
There's the
just trying-
current electoral deadline, although the bill that's currently before Parliament will bring that deadline forward for the public to demand a poll. And
Currently it's 21st of February 2024, and if that bill goes through, it'll be the 11th of December
I thought that the 2024 one, the February one, was for if they wanted a poll ahead so that they could change the electoral system.
Oh, yeah, yes,
so I'm talking
yes.
about when it would need to be in to have the poll at the next election, because they could just keep doing the petition.
there's no deadline.
Well, with printing and stuff, there'll be some sort of cut off.
That's purely logistics.
But they are able to keep doing a petition to force a poll at the next election as opposed to before the election.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, are you talking the
I just
council?
remember getting the advice on it last time.
Yeah, I'm just trying.
Yeah.
Are you talking the council or the public?
Well, I'm assuming it would be the same date. If the public were to put a petition together to say we want you to have a poll at the next election, when is the cut-off for putting that one in? That's a different date to the February next year.
Okay, sorry.
That's what I hadn't seen. Yeah.
Just bear with us, please.
Okay, so we've got amendment first. Did I say? Sorry, I didn't hear.
We're still working on an answer on that one.
All right.
While Joe's working on that, so we're due to have a representation review next term, is that right?
That's correct.
And at the conclusion of the last representation review, the Local Government Commission were clear that they wanted us to look at multi-member wards seriously, based on the evidence they'd been given by the community last time, is that right?
That is the council's position as acknowledged within the LGC report.
Yep.
The council acknowledged that.
That
So
it
the
needs-
council's current intention is to, as stated and reflected in that report, is to look at STV as part of that process.
No, to look at multi-member wards.
As part of that, yes.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So if we were to do the poll at the election and then the multi-member wards at the rep review, they would line up for the 2028 election.
They could
Yep.
do, yes. Both those things are possible,
Yep.
yes. Depending on the outcome of the poll.
Yep.
Okay. Just in response to your other question, I'm just looking at some information that I had 3 years ago. The date of the poll for an election, for the public to hold the date of the poll from the public for the council to hold a poll,
Yeah.
the petition, is the date that it is.
Yeah.
And there's not the ability for the public, and please correct me, I think this is your understanding from what you were saying, there's not the ability for the public to demand the council to hold a poll at the next election. That would be a council decision.
That's correct.
But the guidance that I had last time with some questions was, if somebody started a petition well in advance, could it be carried over to the next cycle, if you like? So effectively, the question that I provided a
So
response
it's still
to.
February next year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
well,
the earlier we make a decision, the more time we give the public to have their say and put a petition together.
well, the public needs to, their petition needs to be in February currently, but if the legislation changes, December.
The council must make a public notice by 19th of September advising the public of that right to demand a poll by that date. it could well be that the date changes because of the legislation that is currently before Parliament. And we are told is being expedited.
Thank you. Yanni?
I was just going to move, maybe we have a workshop or a briefing on this so we can just work it through.
On
It
what?
sounds- on this
amendment?
report, because it sounds like there's a lot of questions.
We've had all that. We had it about 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put you got the amendment, 2 people. Yep.
Can I just clarify? So you want to stick with the April date? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder. So I'll put that motion for the amendment, which is highlighted there. Okay.
How our residents elect us is a fundamental part of our democracy. And while we have been distracted for many years over earthquakes and floods and fires and all of those kind of things, the core fundamentals of our democracy and democratic representation around the table really need to be looked at and had a conversation with the community. Having a conversation with the community is crucial for them to have trust in how we're elected, and for us to simply note that we're doing status quo without even having that conversation, I think, is unhelpful. Even getting information back in April next year, I'm so disappointed that this has taken so long. Even getting back information in April next year still means that is after the deadline for a petition from the community. The community have no certainty over what we might or might not do when it comes to holding a poll. And I think that does our community a real disservice when it comes to that. And I'm just gutted that we haven't enabled the community to have their say in how we are elected.
Sorry, Andre, did you have your hand up? Yes, please, far away, and then Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, personally, I'm not a supporter of STV. There's a number of reasons for that, and mine can be changed over time as well. But I don't believe it's it should be up to us to decide how the public vote for us one way or the other. I just don't feel that's appropriate at all. Hence, I believe it should be put down to a public poll, and it should be up to the public how they like their voting system to be. It's just basic fundamentals of democracy. Same with the national referendum a few years ago and what the voting system would look like. We owe it to our residents to do so. Thank you.
Tim, then Jake.
Thank you. Look, I'm not disappointed that it's come with the timing it has. It's just a reflection of the pressure our staff are under with the pressure that we put them under. So I want to thank them for the information that they've brought to us in the most timely way they could. So thank you very much for that. As an independent, I whether it's first past the post or STV, when we talk about communicating, getting from our public, I really hope that those connected to parties are truly after what the overall public want, rather than, and I really don't care, first past the post or STV. My concern is that it doesn't get skewed on the way through. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Jack?
Similarly to Tim, I kind of agree with that. I think that given central government are looking at this very topic anyway, this isn't the cycle for a rep review. The next one is when we're going to consider the rep review. I just don't see that there's... I've not picked up a public groundswell for changing the voting system. You're right, the people do deserve a say over how their city's governed, and they take that really seriously and who they vote for. But I've never had anyone actually ever come to me and say, look, there's something wrong with how we make that decision. So I just don't think, and the public can have a poll, but I just don't think there's a huge appetite in the actual community for changing how people have their say.
Mark, and then Celeste.
Thank you. I echo that sentiment. I mean, the people do deserve to have the right to tell us how they would like to see us elected, and it's the democracy we live in. At the same time, I hear Councillor Scandrett's, saying we don't want to see it skewed on the way through, and we've got to have good information both ways. if this does get out to a poll, and hey, let's hope it does get to a poll because the people deserve to tell us, then we make sure that all the information is clear, concise, everyone knows the pros, the cons, and there's no skewing of the information to try and get a result that anyone particularly might want. Just let the people decide and let them decide how they put us here in these chairs. That's democracy, and I'm happy to be open.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, today's really just about getting information. It's a pretty low bar. I think, as Mark said, it's important that we have good information to make decisions. So I think until we get that information, we shouldn't be predetermining any outcomes. So whether you support STV or first past the post or some other third option, to me, it's not the discussion today. It's about asking and having time to engage with communities about the voting system that they want. Many other councils have made decisions, and actually many other councils have actually just moved straight to another voting system, because what it is that we're here to do is making sure that as many people as possible engage with the voting process and feel like their voice is heard. And I think we have a responsibility to consider all options without deciding for the public what those options are in advance. Sticking with the status quo is actually making a decision. And in terms of, we hear a lot about predetermination. Well, I don't think we should be deciding whether STV or first past the post is the right system until we hear from the community. I mean, saying that you haven't heard from your peers, whether it's good or bad, seems not a very scientific or evidence-based way to approach things, and I don't think it's a good process to follow. It's interesting that we are waiting for central government to make the decision for us, because I've heard a lot of comments around the table about central government making decisions for us. I think as a council we need to be showing leadership on this, and if leadership is simply by getting information and providing that information to the community, then I think that's what we should be doing today.
Tyrone.
I personally think we've got it right at the moment. I think that we've got a good system. It gets good outcomes. I mean, I'm happy to support 3. I mean, I don't see the harm in a poll, but I mean, the real problem is voter apathy in most of the wards around Christchurch, not mine, and or Tim's actually. But by making things more complicated, I mean, you really risk making people even more apathetic. When we do have a report back, I'd like it to actually talk about how it's going to get people more engaged in the democratic process, because I don't really see how STV will do that. But I mean, I'm happy to support number 3, but I reiterate, I think we've got it right at the moment.
Mel.
In some ways, I do think the system we've got at the moment is working well, because I obviously got elected a couple of times, so it worked well for me. But look, I'm looking at this through a lens of that local government review, and we all had a briefing on it last week with the 17 sort of major points out of that. One of those being about enhancing local democracy to increase access and representation. And there was a number. I didn't hear a peep from anyone that was really against anything that had come out of that review, from what I can recall. That included things like the 4-year term, lowering a threshold to establish Maori wards, and lowering the voting age for local elections to 16, which is something that this council has endorsed. And the other thing it had was ranked voting, so STV. So I am actually happy for a poll to occur to see what the public want, because it's a recommendation of that review, and as has been said, a number of cities are doing it already, so let the people have their say.
Okay, so me, before I put it in, there's no one else. I support the main one. I won't support the amendment, because I'm a great believer, if it's ain't broke, don't fix it. Why should we put staff through a whole lot of work when they're up to their neck in it? And 176 grand's a lot of money in anyone's language, so that's me. So I will put the amendment. All of those in favour of the amendment, which has just been, yes, there we go. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those against the amendment? No. Right.
Alright, so
division on recommendation 3 as the amendment. Councillor Keown. Councillor McClellan.
No.
Councillor McDonald.
No.
Councillor Henstock.
No.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
No.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Yes.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Fields. Councillor Peters.
Yes.
The Mayor.
No.
Councillor Templeton. Deputy Mayor Cotter. Councillor Johansson.
Yes.
Councillor Donovan. Councillor Goff.
No.
It's even.
That's 8-4. 8 again.
Status quo.
So the status quo is lost.
Okay. Okay.
Status quo.
So that's lost. Yes. Okay. So that's lost. So now I will put. That was close. I will put the substantive. Guys, I'll put the substantive. All of those in favour? All right. All those against? Thank you. Carried. Right. So we will break for lunch. I've got to be somewhere at 3:30. So I was hoping to put the Mayor's report through first, but we won't because I haven't got time. Sorry, mate?
So you're voting against the previous resolution? Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. Pause. Councillor Moore, you're asking for your vote against. to be
Okay,
recorded,
thank you.
And yours. And
No, that's clear. That's clear. All right, so what
Councillor
time are we
Moore,
back here, mate?
Councillor
1 o'clock.
Donovan.
I thought it was 2 o'clock.
Sorry.
Before we go to lunch, I'd just like to clear the